Hello, incredible story enthusiasts, and welcome to Story Room Lab. Before we delve into the story, take a second to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss one of our dramatic episodes. Now, tell me in the comments below, where are you watching this story unfold from? I love seeing our community grow across the globe. The smell of fresh, unpainted drywall and industrial cleaner always had a unique way of signifying a new chapter. It wasn't the romantic, dusty scent of old books or the comforting aroma of a childhood home. It was sterile, sharp, and ultimately a blank slate. That's what this third-floor apartment in the heart of the city represented to me, a glorious, unwritten blank slate. My name is Leo, and at 27, I had finally secured a job that didn't involve wearing a headset and apologizing to frustrated customers about their internet connection. I was an analyst now, crunching data for a mid-sized tech firm, and the promotion meant I could afford this place, a small but modern two-bedroom apartment in a building that advertised itself with phrases like urban living and designer finishes. To me, it was just the perfect quiet retreat after a 9-to-5 life spent staring at spreadsheets. I had moved in exactly 3 days ago, and my entire world currently consisted of unpacked boxes, a very comfortable air mattress in the corner, and a perpetually empty fridge. The movers had left hours ago, and the last box, labeled optimistically, "Misc, stuff I don't need yet," was finally tucked away in the spare room. Exhausted but satisfied, I collapsed on the air mattress. My phone was dead, and the silence of the apartment was so profound it was almost ringing. I closed my eyes, intending to rest for 5 minutes before tackling the Herculean task of assembling the bookshelf. That's when the silence was decisively shattered. It wasn't a gentle tap. It was an insistent, slightly frantic rat-a-tat-tat on the solid of the front door, the kind of knock that demanded immediate attention, as if the person on the other side believed the building was on fire. I groaned, pulling myself up. Nobody knew I was here yet, save for the building manager and the delivery guy who dropped off my sad-looking pizza earlier. I peered through the fisheye lens. The image was distorted, but I could make out a young woman. She was standing a little too close to the door, fiddling with something in her hands. Her hair was a vibrant, slightly unruly shade of auburn, pulled back loosely, and she wore a soft-looking knitted sweater over jeans. She looked nervous, maybe a little apologetic, but mostly determined. I unlatched the door, opening it just enough to keep the chain lock on. "Yes," I asked, my voice still thick with sleep and exhaustion. She immediately pressed herself against the gap, her face framed perfectly by the opening. Her eyes were a bright, startling green, and they seemed to take in my entire appearance. Unshaven, wearing an old college t-shirt, and generally looking like a man who hadn't slept properly in a week. In a single quick sweep. "Oh, hi," she said, her voice a little breathy but bright. "You must be the new guy. Leo, right? I saw your name on the delivery slip by the mailboxes." I felt a slight, immediate discomfort. I hadn't even met the building manager yet, and this neighbor knew my name. Yeah, that's me. Leo, can I help you?" She held up what she was carrying. It was a single, solitary AA battery. "Right. So, my name is Chloe," she said, shifting her weight. "I live right across the hall, number 304. And I'm so sorry to bother you, but I was just about to settle in for my nightly movie, and my remote, the universal one for the entire setup, just died. I checked every drawer, every junk pile, and I am one single battery short. I figured, being new, you probably have a box of spare batteries somewhere." She held up the single AA battery again, as if offering it as proof of her plight. "It's a long shot, I know, but I was just desperate. I'll replace the whole pack tomorrow, promise." I stared at the battery, then at her intensely green, hopeful eyes. It seemed like the most ridiculous, trivial reason to knock on a complete stranger's door, let alone one who was clearly still settling in. If she was so desperate, why not run down to the corner store? It was only a block away, but I was new here. I wanted to be a good neighbor, even if this request felt bizarrely urgent. I took a deep breath. "Look, I haven't even unpacked my kitchen stuff yet, but I do remember seeing a pack of batteries in one of the toolboxes. Hold on." I unlatched the chain and opened the door fully. Chloe stepped back politely, standing just outside the threshold. "You're a lifesaver, Leo. Seriously, the new season of this true crime documentary just dropped, and I can't watch it without being able to control the volume." "Right," I muttered, walking over to the dining table where my toolkit was haphazardly spread out. I found a multipack of AAs underneath a roll of duct tape. I pulled one out and walked back to the door. "Here you go," I said, handing it to her. She took it with a gasp of what seemed like genuine relief, placing it next to the one she already had. Her fingers brushed mine, and she held on to my hand for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are officially the best neighbor ever. I owe you one." She didn't leave immediately. Instead, she leaned slightly on the doorframe, her gaze wandering past me, into the chaos of my apartment. "Wow! You really just moved in, huh?" she observed, not as a question, but as a statement. "It looks like a bomb went off." "Listen, I actually moved in about 6 months ago, so I know the area pretty well. The best coffee shop is 2 blocks down, and they do this incredible almond croissant." "Chloe," I interrupted gently, leaning against the doorframe myself. The exhaustion was starting to pull at me again. "I appreciate the local tips, but I am seriously about 5 minutes away from just passing out on my air mattress. I really need to get organized." She blinked, the intensity in her eyes dimming just slightly, replaced by a momentary flash of something I couldn't quite interpret. Maybe disappointment, maybe resignation. Right. Of course. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have kept you. New guy, tired, need sleep. I get it." She smiled, a quick, practiced, charming movement. "Well, I'll let you go. Enjoy the quiet. And seriously, thanks for the battery. You saved true crime night." She gave a small, 2-finger salute, turned, and disappeared into apartment 304. I closed the door, locking it and engaging the chain again. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence return. My mind was racing, not about the upcoming bookshelf assembly, but about Chloe. She had been exceptionally friendly, almost aggressively so, for a first encounter. The battery excuse seemed thin, almost transparent, yet her gratitude had been overwhelming. I shook my head, walking back to the air mattress. "It's just a new neighbor being friendly, Leo. Don't read too much into it." The city was full of people who were overly familiar or just lonely. She was probably just the latter. I lay back down, pulling the sheet over me. But even as the promised 5-minute rest turned into a deeper, full-fledged nap, I couldn't shake the image of her bright green eyes peering into my messy, unmade apartment, or the lingering touch of her fingers when she took the battery. The scent of her light floral perfume, which I hadn't even consciously registered at the time, seemed to still be clinging to the air right by the front door. I drifted off, realizing that my fresh start wasn't going to be quite as quiet or solitary as I had initially planned. Across the hall, a friendly, green-eyed force named Chloe had just established herself as an undeniable presence in my new life, and I had a funny feeling that the single AA battery was just the very first, very small excuse. The day after the Great Battery Rescue, I tried to reclaim the solitude I had moved across town to find. The bookshelf was assembled, a minor victory won with blistered palms and muttered curses. Most of the essentials were in place. Coffee maker on the counter, desktop computer finally connected, and the air mattress replaced by a proper, though still slightly cheap-looking, frame and mattress. I was beginning to feel human again. My job demanded long hours, but I was excited by the challenge. I spent my first official Saturday working remotely, catching up on training modules and trying to get ahead of the massive Q4 data dump that was looming. I had my headphones on, a lukewarm cup of coffee by my side, and the sweet, precious sound of silence filling my apartment. It was 10:30 in the morning. Knock, knock, knock. I sighed, pulling the noise-canceling headphones off. The knocking was lighter this time, less frantic than the battery crisis, but still insistent. I checked the peephole. It was Chloe. Again. I opened the door, managing what I hoped was a polite, but clearly non-inviting expression. "Hey, Chloe, everything okay?" She was holding a small, decorative ceramic vase. It was empty. She smiled brightly, looking far more awake and put together than I felt. She was wearing workout clothes, implying she was either just coming back from the gym or about to go. Leo, perfect timing. I saw your light on. I was just about to head out for my run, but I realized I have a major problem. She stepped slightly into the doorway without being explicitly invited. I tried to dust this little vase. I think it's antique, maybe, and I swear my stupid, cheap dusting spray ruined the finish. Now it's sticky. I was trying to find a gentle solution, maybe some sort of wood cleaner, but I ran out of everything. I know you're new, but you're a guy. You probably have, like, industrial-strength Windex or something, right? I ran a hand over my tired face. Windex? For an antique ceramic vase? The excuse was even thinner than the battery. Chloe, I moved in 3 days ago. All I have is dish soap and a bottle of all-purpose counter spray. And I'm pretty sure you don't use counter spray on ceramics. She frowned, but only for a second. Oh, right. Of course. Silly me. She paused, her green eyes scanning the entryway of my apartment again, lingering on the 2 remaining boxes by the wall. Well, listen, since you're clearly working so hard, is that a new desk setup? Looks professional. I should probably just run out and get something proper. But hey, before I go, I saw a package left right outside your door. The delivery guy must have missed your knock. Didn't want it to get swiped. She reached down, picked up a flat, medium-sized box that was indeed right by my feet, and handed it to me. Thanks, I said curtly, taking the box. It was a new router I'd ordered. No problem at all. Just neighborly duty, she said, beaming. And then she was back to surveying the interior. You know, that wall over there is screaming for a piece of art. I have a friend who's an amateur photographer. She does these amazing black and white cityscapes. I could totally give you her number. It would make this place feel less bare. I felt a low burn of irritation. It wasn't just the interrupting or the silly excuses. It was the way she treated my private space as an open house, a project she was entitled to critique and manage. Chloe, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I'm actually working right now. I have a deadline that won't move. I made sure my voice held a clear note of finality. I need to put my headphones back on. Her smile faltered again, slower this time. Oh, okay, sorry. Didn't mean to bug you. Just being friendly. She took a step back. I'll let you know when I find a perfect antique ceramic cleaning solution. Maybe it's time to invent one. She disappeared, and I closed the door, leaning my forehead against the cool wood for a moment. This was going to be a problem. This wasn't just a friendly neighbor. This was an energetic, boundaryless force field determined to penetrate my apartment using the weakest possible pretext. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern solidified into a weekly, sometimes bi-weekly event. Monday evening, Chloe needed my male perspective on whether a specific type of frozen microwave dinner was worth buying. She stood in my doorway holding the packaging for 10 minutes, dissecting the sodium content and the questionable color of the sauce. Wednesday afternoon, she knocked to ask if I had seen her cat, Mittens. I hadn't even known she owned a cat. She insisted on describing Mittens in minute detail. Patchy calico, slightly overweight, a penchant for climbing, while standing squarely in the middle of my living room rug. Mittens turned out to be sleeping under her own couch. Saturday morning. She came over with 2 identical bags of groceries and, eyes wide with exaggerated panic, asked me to look up a recipe for a soup she was making because she couldn't remember if she was supposed to use vegetable stock or chicken stock. My phone battery is low, and I can't risk losing the recipe, she claimed, despite having a charger 2 feet away in her own apartment. I grudgingly Googled the recipe on my desktop, reading the instructions aloud while she listened intently from the kitchen threshold. Every excuse was a flimsy scaffolding built to justify a 10-minute visit into my apartment, a chance for her to stand near me, chat, and subtly comment on my decorating or lack thereof. She was always charming, always apologized profusely for the intrusion, and always promised not to bother me again, only to reappear 48 hours later with a new, equally absurd request. I started developing defensive mechanisms. I kept my headphones on even when I wasn't listening to anything. I installed a small shelf right next to the door, so I didn't have to step far back when answering. I considered pretending I was never home, but I knew she'd just end up leaving a desperate note taped to the door. One evening, after she had left following a request for me to check if her car headlights were working, a request made entirely from my doorway while her car was parked in the alley visible from her own window, I found myself sitting at my desk, genuinely frustrated. I wasn't a jerk. I was a polite, fairly easygoing person, but I value my privacy above almost everything else, especially after a taxing day at work. Her persistent, unwarranted familiarity was chipping away at my sense of security and peace. It finally dawned on me, not with a sudden flash of insight, but with a slow, sinking weight of realization. Chloe didn't need a battery, a dusting solution, a cat description, or a soup recipe. She just needed a reason, any reason, to be near me. She was clearly interested. The overly bright smiles, the prolonged eye contact, the unnecessary touching, and the way her gaze always lingered on my face when I spoke. It all clicked into place. But the realization only made me feel more uncomfortable. I didn't return the interest. Not only was she completely disrupting the quiet life I crave, but my thoughts were already occupied. My focus, when I allowed it to drift from work, landed firmly on someone entirely different. Someone who lived a few hours away. Someone I talked to every single night. Someone whose absence I was starting to feel acutely now that I was truly alone in this new city. I looked at the closed door of apartment 303. I needed to gently, but firmly, establish a boundary before this escalating pattern became impossible to manage. I just wasn't sure how to do it without completely crushing her very obvious, very persistent, and slightly awkward pursuit. I sighed, picking up my phone. It was almost time for my nightly call. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the familiar, lovely name and picture that always made me smile, and for a moment, Chloe's intrusions evaporated completely. The thought of my real focus made the apartment feel a little less empty, and her problem felt insignificant. Understood. Here is Chapter 3, where Leo attempts to establish boundaries, and the narrative hints more strongly at the person Leo is truly interested in. The following week, I decided enough was enough. The polite deflection wasn't working. In fact, it seemed to be interpreted by Chloe as a minor obstacle, a fun little puzzle to solve before she could access my personal space again. The final straw had been a Monday morning incident where she knocked at 7:15 a.m., needing to borrow a coffee filter, claiming the store didn't open until 8 a.m. I knew for a fact the corner deli opened at 6:30 a.m. Her dedication to the facade was almost admirable, but my patience was utterly depleted. I resolved to adopt a new strategy, polite but firm limitation. The opportunity presented itself on a Thursday evening. I had just gotten home from a particularly brutal day of meetings, desperately craving a quick dinner and a chance to unwind before my nightly call with Sarah. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't even need to look through the peephole. I took a deep breath, adjusted the look of weary professionalism on my face, and opened the door. Chloe was there, holding a single, slightly wilted sunflower. She looked slightly nervous, twisting the stem between her fingers. "Hi, Leo. Long day, huh? You look exhausted," she started, immediately stepping into the role of concerned acquaintance. "It was, Chloe," I replied, keeping my body angled slightly to block a clear view into the apartment. "What's up?" She pushed the flower forward. "Oh, this? I was at the farmer's market today, and this one looked like it needed a good home. I thought it would look nice on your counter. You know, to brighten up the place." This was her most direct attempt yet. An actual gift, not a request for a household item. It was a nice gesture, but the context of the prior interruptions made it feel heavy, weighted with expectation. "That's really thoughtful of you," I said, taking the sunflower. I tried to sound genuinely appreciative, which was hard when I just wanted her to leave. "Thank you." She used the moment of the handoff to lean forward and catch my eye. "No problem." I actually had another reason for stopping by, though. I was trying to download a huge update for my gaming console, and the Wi-Fi is crawling. I checked the modem. I reset the router. Nothing. It's still painfully slow. I was wondering if maybe you're having the same problem. Maybe it's a building issue. This was actually a plausible excuse. The building did share Wi-Fi infrastructure. but I knew she was using it to buy time inside my apartment, hoping for an invitation to check the signal near my router. I paused, holding the sunflower, and looked straight at her. I decided this was the moment for the boundary. Chloe, look, my internet is fine. I just ran a speed test. Actually, I lied smoothly, but that's not really the point. I need to be honest with you. Her bright green eyes suddenly went still and wide, the nervousness in her hands transferring to her posture. She stopped fidgeting. Oh, okay. What is it? I'm really grateful for how friendly you've been since I moved in. You've been helpful, and it's nice to have a neighbor who's looking out for packages and things. But I'm a very private person, especially after work. I work long hours, and I really rely on my apartment being a place where I can just switch off and recharge without interruptions. I know you mean well with the batteries, the soup recipes, the flowers, but I need to ask you to please respect my space and my time. I kept my voice low, calm, and utterly devoid of hostility, focusing only on my needs, not on criticizing her behavior. The effect was immediate and painful to watch. Her face flushed a deep crimson, and she instantly looked mortified, like a child caught with her hand in the cookie jar. The cheerful mask she usually wore dropped away completely, replaced by raw embarrassment. Oh, God. I am so sorry, Leo, she stammered, backing away slightly. She didn't look at me. She looked down at her hands. I had no idea I was being intrusive. I just thought, being a new person, maybe you were lonely or needed help. I guess I got carried away. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Really. Her apology felt genuine, and I immediately felt like a complete jerk. Maybe I had gone too hard, or maybe she really was just painfully awkward and lonely, not pursuing me aggressively. It's okay, Chloe. You haven't done anything wrong. I just need a lot of quiet time. That's all. We're good. I assured her, trying to soften the blow. She nodded quickly, still avoiding my gaze. Right. Privacy. I get it. I won't bother you anymore. I promise. And with that, she turned and retreated quickly back into apartment 304, closing the door with a quiet, definitive click. I stood there for a long moment, the single sunflower heavy in my hand. I felt a confusing mixture of relief. The boundary was set, and guilt. I had effectively shut down the first person to genuinely reach out to me in this new, anonymous city. I put the sunflower in a small glass of water on the kitchen counter, its bright yellow head seeming out of place amidst my minimalist decor. The rest of the evening was blissfully quiet. I made myself dinner, tidied the kitchen, and finally, at 8 sharp, I settled onto my sofa, pulling out my phone. The quiet of the apartment, the quiet I had fought for, was now complete. I video called Sarah. Her face, bright and warm, filled my screen immediately. Sarah was the reason my new apartment had felt incomplete, the reason I found Chloe's efforts so irritatingly unnecessary. Sarah was still finishing her master's degree in a city 3 hours away, but we had been together for 2 years, and the plan was for her to move here once she graduated. She was my anchor, my focus, and the woman I was completely, unequivocally in love with. Hey, stranger, she said, her smile reaching her eyes. How was the analyst battlefield today? Brutal, I admitted, instantly relaxing, but I survived, and I can actually see my desk now. And I officially shut down the neighborhood watch. She gave me a sunflower. I recounted the whole awkward exchange with Chloe, including my firm boundary setting. Sarah laughed, a warm, melodic sound. Oh, Leo, you're such a good person you feel bad for enforcing basic personal space. She was definitely hitting on you, but good for you for being clear. I hope I wasn't too harsh. She looked really upset. I worried. You were honest. That's the best you can be. Now, tell me about this new presentation you're working on. I want details. We talked for over an hour, discussing work, her thesis, apartment decorations, and future plans. In Sarah's presence, the quiet of my apartment felt cozy, not lonely. She filled the space, even through a screen, in a way Chloe never could or would. As I finally hung up, feeling content, I glanced at the sunflower. I felt a twinge of residual guilt, but also a renewed sense of purpose. My life here was built for Sarah, for us. The boundaries I set weren't just for me. They were for the future I was building. I went to bed that night, relieved. The boundary had been established. I knew Chloe wouldn't knock again. But as I drifted off, I couldn't help but wonder if I had underestimated her determination or the depth of her feelings, and whether an explicit boundary was enough to stop the inevitable. Here is Chapter 4, following the moment of Leo setting the boundary and the subsequent silence, leading to Chloe's inevitable and final visit. For 2 blessed weeks, the silence held. The abrupt stop to Chloe's intrusions was almost unnerving in its completeness. There were no more knocks, no accidental bumps into her in the hallway, and no unexpected deliveries needing male perspective. The quiet I had craved finally settled over apartment 303 like a thick, comforting blanket. The change in the hallway dynamic was palpable. I saw Chloe once, briefly, retrieving mail from the downstairs boxes. She saw me, her expression instantly tightening into something guarded and cool. She offered a quick, barely perceptible nod, avoided eye contact, and hurried back to her apartment. It was a stark contrast to the aggressive cheerfulness of our previous encounters. It felt awkward, yes, but infinitely preferable to persistent intrusions. My life, freed from the low-level anxiety of anticipating the next frivolous knock, settled into a perfect rhythm. I excelled at work. I assembled the rest of my furniture. I established a routine of gym, work, dinner, and nightly video calls with Sarah. Sarah and I had moved past the stage of simply planning our future. We were actively constructing it. We were spending hours on video calls, not just chatting, but scrutinizing rental listings for a new apartment that could accommodate both of us once she finished her program in the spring. We talked about adopting a dog, about weekend trips, and about which color scheme would best suit the living room we'd share. Every conversation deepened my conviction that she was the only one for me. The small, isolated apartment in the new city was slowly transforming, in my mind, from a bachelor pad into our first real home. I barely thought about Chloe anymore, except to register the pleasing absence of her knocking. The sunflower she'd given me, now wilted, but still sitting in the little glass vase, was the only lingering physical reminder of our peculiar acquaintance. I should have thrown it out, but its yellow head was oddly symbolic of the entire awkward episode, a brief, bright burst of forced energy that had quickly faded. Then, on a Friday night, the silence broke. I was on the sofa, scrolling through a streaming service, deciding what movie to watch after my call with Sarah had wrapped up about 20 minutes prior. The hour was late, nearly 11, and the building was hushed. Knock, knock, knock. This wasn't a demanding rat-a-tat-tat, nor was it the polite tap. It was a heavy, deliberate, almost hesitant knock. I immediately felt a wave of tension. It couldn't be a battery or a soup recipe this late. I opened the peephole. It was Chloe. She was dressed in comfortable clothes, but her posture was rigid. She was holding a small, brown paper bag, the kind you get from a fancy local bakery. Her eyes looked puffy, and the intense green was dulled, shadowed by what looked distinctly like recent tears. I slowly undid the locks and opened the door, leaving the safety chain engaged. "Chloe, is everything all right? It's late." Her voice, usually loud and energetic, was small and shaky. "I know it is, Leo, and I know I promised. I wouldn't bother you, but I really need to talk to you, just for 5 minutes. Please." She gestured weakly at the bag. "I brought cookies. They're the ones with the sea salt on top. Your favorite, the ones from the place you told me about." My favorite. I hadn't told her that was my favorite. I had casually mentioned once, in the brief window of time before setting my boundary, that they were good. She remembered. She always remembered the details. The sight of her obvious distress trumped my desire for solitude. The polite, distant neighbor routine felt impossible to maintain when someone looked like they were genuinely struggling. I unlatched the chain and opened the door fully. "Come in. What's going on?" She stepped inside, slowly, almost reluctantly, as if she knew this was the last time she would ever cross the threshold. She put the paper bag on my new kitchen counter, the one she had offered to decorate with photographs. "I'm really sorry about last time, Leo," she began, hugging her arms tightly across her chest. "I took your space request seriously. I did. I've been trying to be a better neighbor. But I had a really awful day at work, and I realized I couldn't stand the silence anymore. My silence. She turned to face me, and her eyes finally met mine, swimming with unshed tears. The wall of excuses, flimsy pretexts, and false cheers she had meticulously constructed over the past month collapsed completely. The truth is, I didn't need a battery or Windex or a soup recipe, she confessed, her voice thick. I needed an excuse to see you. I needed to see if you were real, if you were kind, if you were what I thought you were, and you are. She took a shaky breath. I've liked you, Leo, since the moment you opened the door. You're kind, you're smart, and you're quiet, which I took as a challenge, which was stupid, I know. But I'm terrible at this. I'm loud and I'm awkward, and I have to fill every second with noise because I'm genuinely terrified of silence. And the only way I could approach you was by inventing these little crises. So I wouldn't look like I was just standing in your doorway, staring at you, hoping you'd ask me to stay. Her confession hung in the air between us, heavy and fragile. It was raw, honest, and undeniably heartbreaking. I suddenly understood the frantic, constant knocking, the persistent need to insert herself into my life. It wasn't just attraction. It was a desperate, maladaptive attempt to connect. I know this is unfair, dropping this on you so late, she continued, dashing a tear away with the heel of her hand. But I can't keep living across the hall from you, knowing you hate me for being intrusive, and knowing I'm the one who messed up my only chance. I just needed to say it properly. I like you, Leo. I really, really like you. The silence that followed the sincere, desperate confession was far louder than any of her knocks. I felt a surge of genuine compassion for her pain, but my own position was fixed, immovable. There was no comfortable, easy way out of this. I walked toward her slowly, putting a gentle, reassuring hand on her arm. Chloe, look at me. I don't hate you. Not at all. I was frustrated by the intrusions, yes, but I never hated you. I think you're sweet and funny, and I appreciate your honesty right now. It takes real courage to say something like that. I squeezed her arm gently, and then I delivered the inescapable, painful truth. But I can't return those feelings, Chloe. I'm sorry. I really am. But I'm already in love with someone else. The final truth, delivered quietly in my living room late on a Friday night, settled between us like a physical weight. I watched the glimmer of hope I had just seen in Chloe's eyes extinguish. It was a terrible feeling, being the architect of someone's heartache, even when you knew it was the only honest option. She slowly pulled her arm away from my touch, wrapping her arms back around herself. Her posture was defeated, the energetic brightness that usually defined her completely gone. Someone else, she repeated, the words barely a whisper. She looked around my apartment, her gaze finally resting on the framed photograph of Sarah and me that had been tucked away in a box and only just placed on the newly assembled bookshelf. It was a picture from a summer trip, taken in Italy, where we were both laughing and deeply tanned, our arms linked. It was the only clear evidence of Sarah's existence in the apartment, and Chloe hadn't noticed it until now. You're really in love with her, aren't you? She asked, not needing confirmation, just asking to hear the reality spoken aloud. I nodded simply. I am. She's moving here when she finishes her master's program. We're building a life together, Chloe. She closed her eyes briefly, taking a slow, shaky breath. When she opened them, the tears were gone, replaced by a quiet, mature resignation I hadn't seen from her before. She reached for the paper bag of cookies she had placed on the counter. I get it, she said, her voice steadier now. I truly do. You love her. That's why you needed the quiet. That's why you were so focused on your work and your own space. You weren't just being a private guy. You were being a dedicated guy. I should have seen that. She paused, clutching the bag. And you're right, Leo. You had every right to set that boundary. I'm sorry I was so relentless. I saw a nice guy who was new and alone, and I turned him into my personal, desperate project. That wasn't fair to you, or to Sarah. She took a step back toward the door. Keep the cookies. I made them for you, not for me to take back. I couldn't let her walk out like that, not after that level of vulnerability. Chloe, wait. Please, can we talk about this? I don't want things to be awful between us. We're neighbors. She managed a small, sad smile. They won't be awful. They'll just be realistic. I needed this. I needed to know, and I needed to say my piece. Now, I can actually be a regular neighbor, you know? The kind that doesn't try to borrow your car cleaner for a vase. She extended her hand, the gesture surprisingly formal. I took it, shaking her hand firmly. Her touch was brief, professional, and entirely devoid of the lingering warmth it had held during the battery exchange. The brief, awkward romantic pursuit was officially over. "Thank you for being honest with me, Leo," she said, her voice returning to a more normal, though still subdued, volume. "And tell Sarah I wish you both the best. Seriously, I will, Chloe. And I'm sorry it didn't turn out the way you hoped." "Me too," she admitted softly. She opened the door, stepped out, and closed it behind her. This time, the click of the lock wasn't definitive and hurried. It was final. The subsequent months passed quickly and were marked by quiet efficiency. Chloe kept her word. Our interactions became brief, polite nods in the hallway or elevator. If she saw me coming, she often held the door, offered a quick, genuine smile, and moved on. The change was remarkable. She became the ideal neighbor. Friendly, but strictly respectful of boundaries. We transitioned from an uncomfortable, one-sided flirtation to a simple, decent coexistence. I was fully immersed in my work and in preparing for Sarah's arrival. We signed a lease for a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment near the waterfront, a major upgrade from my small bachelor pad. The lease began the 1st of May, coinciding exactly with Sarah's graduation. The day came for me to pack up apartment 303. I was surrounded by boxes again, but this time the scent was of excitement and promise, not sterile newness. My phone rang. It was Sarah, stuck in traffic on her way to pick up the keys to our new place. I walked the final empty boxes down to the alley for pickup. As I walked back up the stairs, Chloe's door, 304, opened. She was holding a potted herb plant, small and fragrant. She didn't look sad this time. She looked genuinely happy for me. "Moving day," she noted, leaning against the frame. "It looks like you actually succeeded in emptying the place out this time." I smiled. I did. New place, bigger space. More room for Sarah's thousands of books. "That's wonderful, Leo. Truly," she said, stepping into the hall. "I wanted to give you this. It's basil, for your new kitchen. It's supposed to be good luck for a new home." I took the small pot, feeling a different kind of connection than before. This was a gift from a friend, not a flirtation device. "Thank you, Chloe. That means a lot. It's a peace offer, maybe?" I joked gently. She laughed, a real, unforced sound. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just practicing my neighborly skills for the next poor soul who moves in. I'll try to stick to housewarming gifts and not remote control batteries this time." "You'll do great," I assured her. "And hey, you're welcome to visit the new place sometime, once we're settled." I meant it. The awkwardness was gone, replaced by mutual respect. "I'd like that very much," she said. "Good luck with the final haul." I nodded, gripping the basil pot, and walked down the final flight of stairs. Later that afternoon, after handing the keys back to the building manager and driving over to the waterfront, I saw Sarah waiting by the main entrance of our new building, her bright, happy face completely erasing all memory of the stress and solitude of the last few months. As we walked up to our new apartment, carrying boxes marked kitchen, OURS, and books, I put the small basil plant Chloe had given me right on the sunniest part of the sill. It was a reminder that even the most awkward new beginnings can lead to genuine, quiet friendships, and that sometimes the persistence of a neighbor, however intrusive, simply serves to highlight the unwavering truth of where your heart truly belongs. The fresh start was finally here, and this time, the quiet was a comfortable sound of shared happiness, and the apartment was waiting to be filled, not by clumsy excuses, but by the life I had waited for.